The next item is an update on the First Hill Streetcar project. So I'll invite new presenters. Good morning.
Good morning.
Is it just you and Ethan? Go ahead,
just me,
introduce
Ethan.
yourselves.
Christa Valles, Council Central staff.
And Ethan Malone from Seattle Department of Transportation.
Okay, are you going to lead off, Krista?
Sure. So in council member notebooks, you will find a memo from myself as well as a PowerPoint from the executive on the First Hill Streetcar project. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of background. The First Hill Streetcar project is intended to connect the First Hill neighborhood and businesses and employment centers to the Link Light Rail system on Capitol Hill and Broadway, the future Link Light Rail station that will be located there, as well as the International District Chinatown Link Light Rail station. Sound Transit initially intended to include a light rail station in the First Hill neighborhood, which is one of the densest neighborhoods in the city, but they encountered significant engineering and construction risks and decided that it wasn't feasible. So they looked at alternatives and determined that a streetcar located in the vicinity was the best alternative. And they were looking at a route between 5th and Jackson and Broadway and Aloha. And they estimated the cost would be somewhere between $140 to $160 million to John Street and another $20 million to Aloha, to extend it to Aloha. So in November 2007, this project was included in the Roads and Transit ballot measure, which, as we all know now, failed. And Sound Transit went back to the drawing board and looked at ways that they might be able to reduce cost of a transit-only measure. And the city looked at this First Hill Streetcar project, and given its experience with the South Lake Union streetcar, determined that we could build it more cheaply, saving anywhere between $20 and $40 million to extend it to John. So we came up with an estimate of $120 million. And that was included in the November 2008 ballot measure, which passed successfully.
I have a quick question, clarification. The first proposal was construct a First Hill streetcar to John Street, and you're saying Sound Transit determined it was 140 to 160, and that same route, the city determined it would only cost us 120?
Yes, that we determined that we would be able to, we were able to reduce Sound Transit's estimates given our experience in building the South Lake Union streetcar. We thought that their estimates were a little on the high side.
And so that 120 is not the configuration of going from Jackson, 5th and Jackson?
It's the configuration of two-way Broadway to John Street and connecting it to the International District station. So it was included in the, actually the city's streetcar network plan, and Ethan has a slide showing you what that route is. So he can show you that. He can also show you where the original Link Light Rail station was intended to be located.
Experience with the South Lake Union inform this? Because the South Lake Union turned out to be more than we thought.
Correct.
So does it make sense that do we know what we did wrong so we don't do it again?
I think I'll leave that question for Ethan.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have, at this briefing, we're primarily going to be talking about alignment alternatives. There is a major step at which the council has to authorize us to move forward to the construction stage. And I'm sure you'll want to look very closely at our cost estimates and our level of confidence on those at that point. I think that the reasons for the $120 million in 2007 dollars, which is actually, we'll talk about what that turns out to be in year of expenditure dollars. The reason that our cost estimate is lower is partly related to just different assumptions about what rather than the Tacoma streetcar sort of model, which is sort of the Sound Transit design criteria, more the South Lake Union streetcar model. So experience is a factor in it, but it's also sort of the the concept. But we'll go into that in more detail, probably more in future briefings than this one.
And the Tacoma model is more like light rail than it is like a streetcar.
Right,
And I'm presuming that that's more expensive to build than
right.
something that's a little bit lighter weight.
Right. The Tacoma streetcar, I believe I'm doing this from memory, but I believe that was about an $80 million project. It's about the same length as the South Lake Union streetcar, and it was completed a few years earlier than the South Lake Union line, which was $53 million. So that gives you a sense of, proportionally why it would be a little less expensive with following the same approach.
Just a financing clarifying question, is Sound Transit then essentially granting the city the money and then it's our project to build, cost overruns or underruns or whatever, or is it Sound Transit's responsibility?
We are responsible for any of the cost overruns that we may encounter in the project beyond the $120 million that was in the Sound Transit package, which is now, as Ethan mentioned, translated into $132 million in year of expenditure dollars.
Gotcha. So we get a lump sum from Sound Transit
Correct.
to do what we want with.
Right,
Thankfully.
and that was basically agreed to in the memorandum of agreement that council members passed in October of 2009, and there's a summary of that attached to the memos. And just a few highlights of that MOA, once again, is that the city is responsible for constructing and operating the streetcar. Sound Transit's contribution is capped at $120 million in capital cost and $5.2 million in operation and maintenance cost. Sound Transit has only authorized funding for the design and environmental review up to about $5 million for the city right now. They have not at this time authorized full funding for the project. And the MOA also requires that the city council approve the route. And then just in lieu of some of the questions we've received today, I just would mention that the MOA says that the city can reject any bids that it receives that are over the maximum allowable construction contract. So there will be points along the way in which, if it looks like this project is more than what we will be getting from Sound Transit, we can make a decision either to fund the balance or decide that the project isn't feasible and not go forward with it. So for today's presentation, Ethan is going to give you an overview of all the routes they've been studying, as well as the criteria that they plan to include in their evaluation of the different routes and getting to their preferred alternative. They are thinking currently that they will propose a preferred alternative route sometime in April to the City Council, and that they will be continuing with public open houses in February and March. And maybe Ethan can talk a little bit more about what the public outreach will look like during the route selection. He did submit a draft public outreach plan last Friday, and I haven't not yet sent that to all of you, but you will have a chance to review that and provide feedback to the executive on that. And that includes the outreach plan for the entire project during the course of the project. So today, in terms of what you might want to give feedback to Ethan on is you might want to mention whether it looks like he's looking at all the routes that council members are interested in seeing being studied, and if the criteria all look to be appropriate, and if there's anything missing there that you think should be included as part of the criteria, you may want to let him know today. Hopefully in the future we'll be getting more detailed information on the cost and ridership and travel times associated with each of these route options. And with that, I will turn it over to Ethan.